Thank you, Lazar, for joining us and talking to us about this very interesting topic, accessibility. And we met you in the WordCamp in Vienna, and we were very impressed of you. So we decided to make an interview with you.
Thanks for your invitation, and thanks for having me here. My pleasure.
How long have you been an accessibility expert?
We can say that my accessibility journey started about 20 years ago when I, as a blind person, began using the PC. Back then, it was screen JAWS. I don't know how familiar your audience with speech technology is, but basically the screen reader is software that converts text into speech. So people with sight issues listen to their devices. This is the way they operate it. It actually started when I was not aware what accessibility actually is, and I was not aware that accessibility exists. But what I discovered very quickly after my humble beginnings was that some options are not available to me as a blind user, contrary to those who can see. Some family members could very easily click on something, but for me that was not possible, because I was using this special technology software and the keyboard. Back then I realized that something is wrong, but I didn't have the right name. I didn't know how to call it. After some time, I joined a couple of mailing lists for professionals, and then they started using this term accessibility. When something doesn't work as expected, then they say this is not accessible. That was basically first time when I heard and recognized this term. Well, coming to my formal engagements related to accessibility, I can say that everything started about 3 years ago now, when people from the WordPress community here in Belgrade asked me to deliver a talk on accessibility. And basically I was like, okay, but I don't know so many things about accessibility and what I need to say. Although I had some experience when it comes to speech delivery and presentation skills. They said you can simply share your everyday stories, and you can also show us some examples, what works and what doesn't. And that was that, right? I gave the speech. Many people were amazed. I realized that even my humble knowledge is greater in comparison with what they know. But I was also kind of disappointed because people didn't know, and most people, although they are developers, they didn't know how do blind navigate the web. And then when they say, so how do they click on something and how they can fill out the form? How do they use phones and machines? They were like, well, we don't know. So out of, let's say, 10 from the audience, maybe one person would know. I remember the event, it was like a couple of months ago. I was giving a speech and I asked the question, so what do you know about using the machine if you're blind? Out of, let's say, 40 people, only one person said it correctly. So yeah, those were some beginnings. And the rest is history, right?
What is the correct answer for how to use the web how to prepare the web correctly for blind people? Do you have to navigate through the keyboard, and also everything has to be labeled, that everything you know where you are and how to navigate? What is important for you and what is missing most of the time when you're navigating through a site?
So a couple of things first. Yes, blind people navigate the web via screen reader and using only the keyboard. Now, there is the accessibility standard, WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. This is basically a set of rules prescribing how the website should behave in different situations. I can give you a couple of examples. Labeling forms correctly is definitely one of the most frequent accessibility issues, but it's not the only one. There are many more. For example, if the image contains the important information, but it is not conveyed either through the alt text or text with outside of the image that is not possible for blind people to recognize. So they cannot recognize it and they doesn't know what the image actually says. For example, on the e-commerce websites, if the image contains a discount price, which is not conveyed neither through the alt text nor a text outside of the image, that is not accessible. Also, we have carousels and slides that moves. Users must be able to stop the rotation. If they are rotating automatically, this can cause significant issues, not only to the blind users, but also to the users with epilepsy and other cognitive disabilities. So you need to allow them to stop or pause this carousel from moving, or basically the slides from moving with the carousel. Many links are not labeled correctly. For example, social media links as well. We also see websites that contain texts that function as a heading, but it is not marked up as such. This can cause a variety of issues, especially if a user needs to find something important on the website. In many cases, errors are not identified to screen viewer users nor other users. For example, if you are having a contact form and then you click submit, but let's say that you've missed some required fields and the error is showed, the error is displayed, this must be indicated as well. And the focus needs to move to the first required field, which was not filled out. When it comes to forms and required fields, all obligatory fields must be marked up as such. You can give it ARIA attribute like required or a screen viewer only text. But what is also very important is to indicate those fields with the star sign as well, because this will help not only blind people, but people with other types of disability who do not use a screen viewer but rely upon different assistive technology. There are many cases where things are not focusable by keyboard. This can cause issues for keyboard users, but maybe not for screen viewer users. So when you do a website, you must be sure that your website is available, is accessible to all types of disabilities. And this is what the WCAG says. This WCAG contains a list of criterias. These are guidelines that covers many accessibility problems, almost most of them. If X happens, you need to do Y. The problem is that most developers don't know how to implement those solutions. It is very easy to tell, yes, do this, do that, but how to implement it, that's trick. And this is why there are so many resources containing code examples and details so they know how the specific situation must be resolved or can be resolved.
Is there something in the WCAG guidelines they are missing, or is it too much written down there, or something you would say you can ignore?
Basically, the standard itself, as I said, grasps a lot of accessibility issues. Almost everything is covered by the standard. And also this standard changes. Like recently, the WCAG 2.2 got published after 3 years, I think. Every second or third year, whatever, so after some time, every once in a while, so to speak, we get a new version of WCAG that changes because technology is constantly changing and the WCAG must simply cover those trends. Yes, I wouldn't say that the standard does not contain something which can happen on the website. So I cannot say, hey, this standard does not contain this accessibility issue. No, WCAG is very comprehensive. However, it could happen that we have some conflicts between usability and WCAG. Sometimes it is very difficult to reconcile, right? You need to know how to be both accessible from the usability perspective and how to be in accordance with the WCAG. Believe me or not, but sometimes it is very difficult to achieve. That's why users are so important, especially the users, the real users of assistive technology, because they know if something would be right for them or not. Now, in most cases, we follow standards and we try to make the websites accessible based on the recommendations given by standards. But again, as I say, there are countless situations that I encountered where the standard says something, but the user experience would be totally different if the standard is implemented. But again, in most cases, we do try to follow the guidelines prescribed in the WCAG.
Have you an example for a pretty good accessible page where you say everything is perfect and you can have a perfect user experience?
Of course, so there are different pages. For example, the one accessibility agency that is running around, they are called Equalize Digital. They have an extremely accessible website. And basically, most websites that deal with disabilities are extremely well optimized. Now, there are many benefits of having accessible website. It is not only obligatory by law. You have different benefits, such as revenue growth from disabled clients, usability friendliness, which says that accessibility is essential for some, is essential for someone, but beneficial to everyone. So if your website is accessible, this means easy to use. You can market this as accessible and also increase number of customers. You foster innovation and SEO optimization, meaning that I recently read a survey which says that websites that are accessible and decide to rank organically, their ranking is decreased by 12%, by staggering 12% in comparison with the websites that are not accessible. Making the website accessible contains principles that foster Google to rank your website higher. And so this is, of course, not the only, but a very significant reason for which people decide to go accessible. Of course, there is the legal protection. Maybe you are not aware of, but in 2025, the European Accessibility Act will come into force, meaning that users will be able to sue companies over inaccessibility. In the USA, this is the practice since 2020, so about 4 years from now. The number of lawsuits over inaccessibility is constantly, rapidly increasing, and I don't see a reason why this will not happen in Europe. I think that we need to send a message both to developers and different companies that they need to prepare for this. Yes, this is coming. Don't be don't think that you cannot be sued or that people with disabilities won't sue you because they cannot click on pay now button. Yes, they will have the right to do it. Now, of course, we can speak about different industries. Let's be upfront. Some industries are more inclined towards going accessible versus some others. There is still so much ahead of us in terms of implementation of this law and how all of this will be implemented in practice, how they will realize all of this. But I definitely think that many companies are now in the risk if they don't care of accessibility.
Yeah, I think it's a big topic for everyone these days, for developers and companies as well. It's popping up on every discussion. It is a big topic. When you experience, what is the most forgotten thing? What is the most overseen thing that you experience when someone says you, hey, our page is accessible, and you say, no, it's not because of, what would it be?
Labels, illogical structure of headings, a lot of unlabeled images, drop-down menus that cannot be interacted with, for example, date pickers. There are so many airline companies that do not allow people who are blind to book flights by picking the right dates. Basically, you cannot choose the departure and returning flights. That is a huge inaccessibility issue. You cannot choose the date. You can't pick the date through the calendar. Scheduling events software also contain those errors. Luckily, Calendly is not one of them, so we can see that Calendly is very accessible in terms of this topic. But yeah, date pickers are awful, sometimes even impossible to resolve. Sometimes users are really stuck there, and that requires different solutions from developers. For example, I can advise them either use one of the accessible date components. You can find them on the web. I don't want to advertise none of them. Or allow people to enter a date using fields like the form fields that allows people to type the dates so they know what to expect. But make sure your fields contain associated instructions so they understand the format they need to type the date in.
What else do you wish for the future to have on websites? Something that you cannot experience right now?
I wouldn't say that it's about websites. Oh yeah, banking services are extremely inaccessible. For example, checkboxes. So I cannot create an account because I'm not able to check their terms and conditions privacy policy dialog. So if they wanted me to agree with their terms, and yes, I do agree, but I cannot check the box because they are using some custom designs and they do have different approaches. So the checkbox is not possible to check, right? And I cannot proceed with my account creation. Also, sometimes it is not so easy to transfer money between two different banks because you cannot enter the bank account information, choose the right address or bank. So transferring money is not that easy. Going through the transaction list also. I can say that unfortunately banks are not so accessible. I think that they are one of those stakeholders that will need to take care about this, especially when it comes to this European Accessibility Act coming into force shortly. But yeah, banking services are also very inaccessible. The software solutions, but this is beyond our topic. Many software solutions are very unavailable.
When you think about the last 3 years, for example, do you think that the term accessibility got more and more in the awareness, and does stuff change? Or is it too slow?
I would say there are changes. They are slow, but still something happens. Developers and people who build the software and like build the website, I see the increase of knowledge, at least when it comes to this term. So when I say accessibility, they know what it is. And it is a huge progress. Maybe they doesn't know how to blind navigate the web, but they do know what accessibility is. Also, some of them know how does the screen mirror work. Yes, they do know. However, many of them definitely lack the knowledge. How do real users approach this? So they say, yes, I test the screen mirrors. And then I ask, okay, but how to do it? That they were like, I go tabbing, I go arrow up and down. Do you use screen mirror commands? Not really. What are the screen mirror commands? Yeah, here there is a space for improvement where we still need to educate not only developers, but also the corporate management. What is accessibility? And most importantly, why do they need accessibility? Why accessibility is crucial for their business. But yes, I do see changes. It's good to see that. Also, in the last couple of, let's say, months or even a year, I see a lot of events where accessibility is promoted. That is a very good thing. So I would encourage everyone to continue this path.
What would you like to say to company CEOs? They say, accessibility, only just another rule we have to follow. It's always the law. How would you convince them that it is important that his company should join and make the website for everyone accessible?
I would definitely start with numbers, with revenue growth from disabled clients. People with disability have a spending power of incredible 6 trillion euros. That's amazing per year. There is a survey that says like businesses are losing 7 to 10% of their total revenue per year just because they are not accessible. And then I ask, what would you use those money if you had them, right? Now imagine your employees, well, imagine you having a salary like 10% more, like
Nice.
So basically everyone loves that, right? So why not? I read some researches proving that the ROI for accessibility is $100 for $1, which says like if you invest $1, you can get 100. But I would take this data with caution. Maybe it has something to do with industry. To be honest, this information is not as convincing as I would like it to be. But revenue increase definitely. We have a lot of case studies. For example, supermarket chain Tesco that increased their revenue like 30K pounds per, I think, monthly basis once they implemented accessibility solutions. So yeah, money talks, openness towards different communities, corporate social responsibility. We know that it sells. 62% of respondents reveal that they would rather buy from the brand who is socially responsible in comparison to the one that is not. So yeah, those are some information. Also SEO optimization. Facebook, Google, also they boost accessible content. They want the content to be accessible. So, there are so many things on our side.
What do you wish for the future, for the near future, about the next 2 years?
I think that we must first discover the right way to promote accessibility among decision makers, and second, educate developers so they know how to code accessibly. Because once those two conditions are met, then accessibility would be much smoother to implement. And so this is why I would invite everyone to join accessibility events and follow this topic, because not so many people are aware of this, but it really brings tremendous benefits. Coming back to your first question, how would you convince companies to go accessible? You know what? Being accessible is not sufficient if the growth revenue is the only thing you care about. You need to know how to advertise accessibility to people with disabilities, because there is a huge, like, there are 15% of population in the world are people with disabilities. This huge population is left behind in terms of marketing and advertising. No one knows how to approach them as customers. You can say, yes, but most people with disabilities are poor. Well, not really, yes. But again, they do have a spending power, as mentioned. And if you know how to advertise toward them, then they can be your golden mine. Because if people with disabilities know that your website is accessible, they will always return and buy again. Why? Well, simply because they don't want to explore if the competitors is accessible or not, if they will be able to click on pay now on the competitor's website or no, when they know that you can do that for them and that your website is fine for them. And even if you sell your services or products at a premium price, or even if you are a bit more expensive than your competitors, just because they know that they won't have difficulties going up and down, seeing if the forms are labeled, doing all of those things that we were discussing today. So if they are aware that their transaction will come smoothly, they will always return to you, regardless on the fact that you might be a bit more expensive.
But we have a return on invest, so I guess that it will pay off.
Exactly,
at least.
it covers. That's the
Yes.
trick. It covers. Plus, having accessible website or accessible digital product, it can be the mobile app as well. Having the accessible product and paying someone to help you do this is much cheaper than going to court and paying all of those fines, getting settled, etc., etc.
If you're navigating through a website which has poor accessibility, how long does it take you to say, I don't want to deal with this bad accessibility?
Generally, it depends from issues. For example, if the website contains dynamic carousel that rotates automatically and the screen reader constantly reports the content, whatever I press, the carousel content is reported. Then it takes me about like 2 minutes to say, okay, I have to go away. This cannot be used. I cannot use this website. again, it depends from the level of inaccessibility. There are some accessibility issues that are still there, but do not prevent me from completing the thing on the website. Right? For example, let's say that like a register button is not labeled correctly, but it is clickable. Screen will say register. It will not say register button. I still can press enter and proceed. So this accessibility issue did not affect my personal experience that much. However, it can affect the experience of a keyboard user because who do not use screen but solely keyboard. Because in that case, the button might not be focusable by keyboard and they cannot click it. Yeah, again, it depends from website to website. If you create a bank account and you reached the end where everything was decently accessible, you just have to check the checkbox saying, yes, I accept your terms and conditions. Please send me the SMS code so I can continue. And if it took me about 15 minutes to go over this process, and then I cannot move on, then it's like 15 minutes. Okay, but this is because their level of accessibility. So until that point, they were accessible. When it comes to air companies, I can quite quickly determine if the date picker works or not, maybe like 5 minutes up to 10 minutes, but no longer than 10 minutes. So again, everything depends on the specific situation on the website.
How do you experience embedded videos with subtitles? If you have it in a one language and then you have a subtitle from the other language,
yeah,
how do you deal with that?
Yeah, we didn't cover this in the interview, but videos are one of the most critical accessibility things to bear in mind. Again, this is the way where standard doesn't meet the real needs, and that doesn't basically cover it. What a standard says, according to WCAG, you have two options. You have to make videos available to all people, regardless of disabilities. That's fine. And then if the video contains a content which is very important, you have two options. Option one, you have to add the audio description so blind people know what is showing on the video. Another way is to add a transcript that will basically explain everything. It is very important that you allow turning off and on both the description and a transcript so people can decide if they want to turn this off or on, because not all people will need the audio description or transcript. You can choose one of those solutions. So you can add either transcript or the audio description. Now we have captions, but those captions are different from the subtitles because captions are mostly related to the deaf users, and they cover not only what is spoken, but they basically unhide the audience reactions or speakers' reactions. For example, smiles, on the applauses, or basically audience reactions, so they know how to audience or speaker respond to different situations. You have like open captions and closed captions. They can be turned on and off, and open cannot. And as for your question, how do blind people read subtitles if the video is on a different language that they do not understand, but it still contains subtitles? This is not resolved by standard. Standard does not contain this. There are some screen reader add-ons that can basically recognize the letters and then read it aloud. But in many cases, this is not as accurate as we want it to be.
And you think about alt texts of pictures, what would you give us as a suggestion, what we should write into experience a picture in the best way?
So basically, the alt text can be very important, but unfortunately, not so many people know how to write it effectively. They write like the whole sentence, 5, like XYZ, yeah, da, 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 da. No, don't do that. Just be brief, be short, and say 2 or 3, like up to 5 words. I don't need detailed descriptions. That is just time consuming for screen reader users. And make sure you know the difference between decorative images, so images with decorative text, and images with alt text. Because if your image does not contain important information, that is counted as decorative image, which means that you can leave the alt text empty. This will allow screen reader to skip it, which saves time for users. But if the image depicts crucial data, then you can add the alt text according to the instructions I just provided.
Oh, I thank you very, very much for your time and for your expertise. We're really delighted that you found the time to talk to us. Thank you very,
you.
very much. And we will stay in touch. I will
Definitely.
invite you soon.
Have a great time. Talk soon then. Bye-bye.